Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace. Peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone to the continuation of our class on Swami Prabhavananda's How to Know God, the Swami's translation of and commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. We're just ending the first chapter, which is the chapter titled The Aim of Yoga. The aim, this purpose, the goal, which is said to be stilling of the thought waves of the mind. Now, as Patanjali points out to us, the first 6 limbs of his Raja Yoga are a matter of self-effort. These first 6 limbs we've been over, and we'll go over them again tomorrow during our open forum on Raja Yoga. But those first 6 limbs are a matter of self-effort. The 7th and 8th limbs, samadhi, the samadhi we will read about again here as we start this afternoon, that samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi, seedless samadhi, and liberation are what happens to you. This is not a matter of effort. You've made the effort. You've achieved savikalpa samadhi, or nirvichara samadhi, the samadhi with seed. That is to say, there is still the potential for attachment and desire, though it is dormant. Otherwise, you wouldn't have achieved the nirvichara samadhi. But then something happens to you as you continue your practice and you achieve this state. A man is said to be free even in this life when he is established in illumination. His bliss is unending. He almost forgets this world of appearances. He almost forgets this world of appearances, even though his mind is dissolved in Brahman. Even though his mind is dissolved in Brahman, he has become one with Brahman, in other words. Even though his mind is dissolved in Brahman, he is fully awake, free from the ignorance of waking life. He is fully conscious, but free from any craving. Such a man is said to be free, even in this life. And there's these lines from a poem. His heart is a fire because he is free. His clear eyes show what it is to see beyond the pages of any book and know the truth wherever he looks. His heart is a fire because he is free. His clear eyes show what it is to see beyond the pages of any book and know the truth wherever he looks. For him, the sorrows of this world are over. Though he possesses a finite body, he remains united with the infinite. Of course, we have no idea what those words mean. That's why the lines of that poem, at least we can see how they behave. Even though he possesses a finite body, he remains united with the infinite. His heart knows no anxiety. Such a man is said to be free, even in this life. Once nirvikalpa samadhi has been achieved, it is possible for the saint to pass into and out of it repeatedly. This was the case with Sri Ramakrishna. Once nirvikalpa samadhi has been achieved, it is possible for the saint to pass in and out of it repeatedly. The reason the Swami says the saint is because most people, having achieved nirvikalpa samadhi, don't return to the body. They don't. If they do, they will remain, it is said, a maximum of 21 days, simply because there's still that little bit of prarabdha karma left, that little bit of life force that brought them into this life to continue their spiritual progress. But the saint, the reason they do this is for no other reason than they serve as a teacher. The saint can pass in and out of nirvikalpa samadhi repeatedly. This was the case with Sri Ramakrishna. While in nirvikalpa, he experienced union with the impersonal Brahman. But on returning to normal consciousness, he would speak of God in the aspect of the Divine Mother, his chosen ideal. And he said that which was known to him in nirvikalpa, he called that water still, no change, eternally changeless, infinite. But, he said, the waking experience, the experience of the world, he said, no different. The substance is the same, water still or water in waves, same water. On returning to normal consciousness, Sri Ramakrishna would speak of God in the aspect of the Divine Mother, Shakti, Maya, Kali, his chosen ideal. Mother did not lose her reality for him because he had known Brahman. It is important to remember this for us. It is important to remember this, for in our language, the word real is used vaguely and loosely, and is apt to lead to confusion. When we say that Brahman alone is real, we do not mean that everything else is an illusion, but rather that Brahman alone is fundamental and omnipresent. The aspect of God, the divine incarnations, have their own relative order of reality. So do the subtle and gross objects. The materialists, those who describe themselves as being down to earth, are the ones who are living in an unreal world because they limit themselves to the level of gross sense perception. But the perception of the illumined saint ranges over the whole scale from gross to subtle, and from subtle to absolute. So notice the spectrum that he mentions, from the gross to the subtle, and from the subtle to the absolute. These are the three aspects of reality that we as an embodied being are capable of realizing. The first two we experience. The first, because there is no mind there, it is, as it was said, dissolved. There is no mind to experience it, but it is still known to consciousness. So gross and subtle we can experience because we can have the experience of those aspects of reality. And then the subtle, the saint, the illumined soul, goes on from the subtle to the absolute. And it is only he who knows the nature of this universe. It is only he who knows what the nature of this universe actually is. Okay, that's the end of chapter 1. We've gone over what the goal or the aim of yoga is. We're about to go into yoga and its practice, what Patanjali tells us in his workbook. This is what you are to do. But before we do that, are there any comments from your own wisdom or experience, or any concerns or questions that all of this raises for you? Anything at all from anyone? Let's not leave this first chapter until everyone is secure that they have said what they want to say or heard what they want to hear about this particular, the goal, stilling of the thought waves of the mind, which when it is complete, this stilling of the thought waves of the mind, in this nirvikalpa samadhi, one becomes one with the reality, capital R, Brahman, and then may or may not return to this world of the real in the relative sense, the gross and the subtle aspects of reality. Anything from anyone at all?
It's Brother Shankara.
Yes, Jeff.
In that last paragraph, the passage about Sri Ramakrishna returning from union with Brahman and then speaking of God as the Divine Mother, his chosen ideal, that raises the question for me that I had been thinking that once you have union with Brahman, you no longer need your chosen ideal.
You no longer need the chosen ideal?
Right. This was maybe faulty thinking on my part. That's just what I understood. So this is saying that you always find the chosen ideal to be useful even after you've achieved samadhi. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, first of all, most of what we would call ordinary human beings, they are not ordinary at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't pursue this to its ultimate achievement. But those who aren't saints and incarnations, they will probably not return from that state of nirvikalpa samadhi. So there's no question of needing or wanting the chosen ideal anymore. You have become one with what you were experiencing as the chosen ideal in its absolute sense. For those who do return, as Sri Ramakrishna says, they return for one reason and one reason only: to share with suffering humanity the way forward out of their suffering. And he says this happens because they retain a slender thread of perfect and purified ego, the ego of wisdom, pure wisdom, or the ego of love, or both. Now, Sri Ramakrishna retained them both, wisdom and love. Others, other incarnations, we see, like Adi Shankaracharya, though he spoke of love and the power of love, he really spoke from that purified ego of wisdom. That was his mission. On the other hand, Chaitanya, Sri Chaitanya, though he spoke of the highest uh, and gestured toward it even in his prayer, he preached from love and preached love, love of the divine, and giving your whole heart, soul, and being to the divine in love, as a part of his prayer says, as many times as I may be reborn, grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee. So these are the two aspects that the one who returns as a teacher most embody, according to Sri Ramakrishna, one or the other. Vivekananda said one of the reasons Sri Ramakrishna is to be seen as unusual, if not unique, though we can see both of these aspects also in Christ. And Vivekananda speaks about that in his talk, Christ the Messenger. But Sri Ramakrishna embodied these both fully. And so this is, it isn't that he needed the chosen ideal. He simply embodied them both. As he said at the end of his life, pointing to his body, there are two here. The mother, meaning his chosen ideal, Kali, and her worshipper, Vishnu. He who was Rama, he who was Krishna, is here as Ramakrishna. And who was Rama and who was Krishna? Vishnu. So, mother and her worshipper. And so, Sri Ramakrishna, it wasn't a question of needing, but embracing, totally embracing in waking awareness, this chosen ideal and its expression. He says, everything I do, everything I say, everything I think is the action, the thought, the speech of the Divine Mother. If you want to know what I mean by that, read from page 132 in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, where he acts out, so to speak, this relationship with Kali when he's asked to go speak to the Brahmo devotees on a steamer trip on the Ganges. And he says, "What shall I tell them, mother? What do I?" He doesn't say, "Oh, I know what to say." He says, "No." He says, "What shall I tell them, mother? They are so hedged about with limitation. What shall I say?" Then he goes into samadhi. And when he returns from the samadhi on board the steamer, in the presence of all these devotees, he gives the most eloquent talk on the paths of yoga that you'll find as in a concise form that I know of anywhere. It's absolutely stunning. Page 132 forward in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, chapter 5. It's the fifth chapter. Notice the number 5. Sudden change not for Sri Ramakrishna, but sudden change for those who he speaks to. They are transformed, and it talks about it. And M, of course, is among those who was with the master on this steamer trip and is the one reporting all this. So does that answer it for you, Jeff?
Yes, thank you, and I will look up that passage.
Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, you will come to treasure it. You will come back to it a number of times, as I have. I must have read it. I really don't know how many times, but many, many times. And I quote from it often in talks because it's so precise and eloquent in its description of the paths of yoga. And you can see how Vivekananda, though I don't think he was present, when he develops his discussions of the 4 yogas, you can see that it's mirroring very much what Sri Ramakrishna said. Anything else about the goal or aim of yoga as has been described in these 50 sutras of chapter 1? Anything else from anyone? That was a very pregnant question, obviously, Jeff. So I hope that everyone got something.
Yeah, I have a more practical and I guess personal question, Brother Shankar. This is Anshu, by the way.
Hello, Anshu. Good morning.
Good morning. So
Or good afternoon, I'm sorry.
I've been struggling with thoughts of like worthiness, and I've been sober from drugs for about 3 months now. I haven't touched any drugs.
Uh-huh.
And I've been really struggling with drug addiction, and I've been, I felt, I've been reading a little bit of Ramakrishna's literature, and, I always find this tug within me to come back to this circle of devotees, and I'm struggling with this idea of like, whether I, what can I read from Ramakrishna that will, I've already read some good stuff, but do you have any ideas on how I can fill this void in my soul, and that I've been using for the longest time to fill with substances? And now that I've stopped, I feel this void opening up again, and I need something to fill that void,
Yes. First of all, about the question of worthiness, where you started. There is no question of worthiness, my dear. Absolutely no question of worthiness. You are worthy simply because you exist. You are a creation of the divine. You embody the divine as the Atman within. There is no question of worthiness. But this question of this ache yes, this void that you've been self-medicating. So many self-medicate, and they may use more seemingly innocent things like television or uh, deep involvement with friends and so on and so forth. All palliative, all temporary. They don't really fill that void. The spiritual aspirant comes to understand that there is this feeling of void. Swami Prabhavananda describes it in his book, Spiritual Heritage of India, as it comes to be an unbearable ache. It becomes an unbearable ache. You must find some relief. And this is where this is the dawning of your beginning of realization of God, when this ache becomes unbearable and you don't do anything else other than spiritual practice. So, what to read? Read Swami Prabhavananda's The Spiritual Heritage of India. You will find, dear, you will find that from which you have sprung. This is your heritage. This is the immense and unmeasurable spiritual grace and grandeur of the Indian spiritual tradition spoken of as Sanatana Dharma, the perennial, eternal, and completely comprehensive philosophy of spiritual pursuit and achievement. So after you've read the Spiritual Heritage of India, or while you're reading it, be in touch with me.
Okay.
And by the way, when you call me this afternoon, if you call me this afternoon, I know you called this morning, call on the cell phone number. I called you earlier, I returned your call and I returned it on the cell phone. So your phone will have captured that number if you'd otherwise lost it. So
Yes, I lost that cell phone completely, but we can talk about that later, brother.
okay. So call me on the cell phone.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. And so I hope that answers your question. After you've read and assimilated what's in the Spiritual Heritage of India, which you will find awesome.
Okay.
It is beyond measure awesome. I recommend that book to anyone, any spiritual aspirant. But in your particular case, that's where I would begin, with The Spiritual Heritage of India by Swami Prabhavananda. It is a stupendous work, one of his greatest works. Thank you, Anshu. Thank you for being with us this morning. I'm glad you found your way back here. And anything else from anyone?
I would just like to say that in any such situations, it's my own personal experience that brothers association works like magic.
Well, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. So, thank you, Rajiv. Anything else from anyone?
I have something I would like to ask.
Yes, Josh.
The stilling of the thoughts and taking on the mind of Brahman after you still the thoughts. I've heard in other ways, and I just want to see what your opinion is on this. The stilling of the thoughts is the stilling of the imagination, and taking on the mind of Brahman is like taking on a different kind of thinking that is based on Brahman instead of your own selfish, egotistical ways.
There is no thinking when you're in union with Brahman. there is no thinking because there is no thinker there. The thinker has been stilled. The thought waves of the mind have been stilled. But when you return from that state, if you have the grace of returning from that state, yes, indeed, you are utterly transformed. Nothing will seem as it seemed before. This is not my personal experience. I'm talking about everything I've read. And you can read about it very, very beautifully presented in the book Love Poems from God, which is the testimony of 12 illumined saints, 12 who had achieved this state of what we call nirvikalpa samadhi. It's called different things in different traditions. The peace that passeth all understanding is how Christ spoke of it. The peace that passeth all understanding. What does understanding mean? Understanding means something that we can verbalize or put into thoughts. So that peace, that is, he's speaking of nirvikalpa samadhi. So, and the Sufis speak of it different ways, and so on and so forth. The mystical traditions. These are 12 saints from the mystical traditions, from Rabia at the beginning to Tukaram at the end. This is 12 illumined saints speaking of what it was before their illumination and what and how that illumination just changed everything.
So, Brother Shankara, if you kind of accidentally creep into the subtle realm and you're like dipping your toe in, should I ignore those things and shoot for nirvikalpa samadhi?
No, you can't ignore those things, Josh. No, you don't shoot for nirvikalpa samadhi. This is what Patanjali tells you. Don't ignore those subtle things. Find a way. One of the yogas is what is taught from here. One of the yogas, or as Vivekananda says, one or more or all four of the yogas, practice those. And as you practice those, you slowly and slowly eliminate all of the impediments to spiritual progress and purify the mind, the body, and the expression of spirit. As Sri Chaitanya says, speaking of the Bhakta's path, the Bhakti way, chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. Now, that's the Bhakta's path to that achievement. But any of the yogas leads there to what? The mirror of the heart will be wiped clean of its samskaras, of its tendency to reflect imperfectly, and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. What a stupendous pair of promises. But they are repeated by the saints of all the traditions. They'll say, you just keep after it, and this is what will happen to you. There's a beautiful, beautiful poem by Hafiz about the mirror of the heart. And he's speaking, of course, from the Sufi tradition, Christian and Sufi. So don't ignore these. You can't shoot for nirvikalpa samadhi. You shoot for self-purification, for identification with your chosen ideal, whatever that is. As Swami Prabhavananda says, the chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. The chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. Learn to feel that living presence. That's his first instruction for meditation. So the chosen ideal, this embodiment and embodiments in all these ways of form and formless aspects of the divine, they are there because that's what we want and need. And so whatever your heart is drawn to, whatever you love, start with worship of that, however you can. And Sri Krishna says in the Gita, you do that with sincerity, you do that with your whole heart, you do that with your desire for realization, and I'll get behind it and make it happen. But it is our persistence, our sincerity, that attracts Krishna's attention. And as Swami, as Sri Ramakrishna put it, practice just a little. And he's saying this in this dark Kali Yuga, the end of the Kali Yuga in which we're living, the end of the Kali Yuga and the beginning of the Golden Age. He says, practice just a little and someone will come forward to help you. And Sri Krishna says the same thing in the Gita about Karma Yoga, which is his main teaching for us. That is the Gita's main teaching for how to begin your progress toward realization. He says, even a little practice of this yoga, even a little practice of this yoga will free you from the terrible wheel of rebirth and death. That is, free you from your karma. So each of these great teachers, what does Christ say? Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you. No qualifications, no limitations. All else shall be added unto you. That all else is quite a promise. Thank you, Josh. Anything else from anyone? These are the perfect questions to be asking, because Josh asks that I shoot for Nirvikalpa Samadhi. You can't shoot for Nirvikalpa Samadhi. You shoot for, if you shoot for anything, Savikalpa Samadhi. This sense of union, this knowledge that you are that chosen ideal that Swami Prabhupada speaks of. You, that the chosen ideal is you yourself, no different. When you come into full knowledge of that, that is Savikalpa Samadhi. And that is knowledge. It is still something of the mind. It is an experience. But you experience that you and your chosen ideal, there is no difference. You are part of that.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
on the topic of this, self-medication, whether
Yes.
it is by means of hard drugs or television or retail therapy or whatever,
Retail therapy, I love it.
I think even worrying sometimes is a form of self-medication.
Oh, yes. It's one of our favorite distractions.
Right. I think all that is an attempt to find a little piece, PICE, of the big PEAC of which can only be found inside. We are trying to find little piece outside,
Yes.
but really the piece is inside.
Yes.
Personally, I think, of course, finding my way to Thakur and all his, teachings and everything, the mantra has, I think, really been a boon. Staking faith in that, like when mind wants to go elsewhere, just to kind of, I'm not seeking Savikalpa, Nirvikalpa, nothing, but just focus on that. And sometimes even that helps to get out of the habits, which then leads to sanskars or whatever.
Yes. It's only then that we free ourselves from worry, if only temporarily. We
Right.
turn inside and we focus on this, what? This vibration of consciousness that is especially attuned to this human body to purify it, to purify the every aspect of our expression as a human being. That's what the mantra contains, that complete spiritual treasure of the incarnations. And in particular, if you take Sri Ramakrishna's mantra, as you did, then it is his, especially his spiritual treasure box, that is opened to you and shared with you. And then we find that peace, P-E-A-C-E, within. We experience it first as bliss, but that is just the beginning. It goes beyond bliss to peace. But this is a matter of decades of practice before the mind becomes quiet enough to where we sink below all of the mind's activities and sink into that peace. That's when Savikalpa Samadhi is near. Thank you, Swayam.
One of the things that I used, especially in the beginning, is it was hard to hold the image of the Ishta in my heart. So I would literally imagine that I'm wiping a mirror. You know,
Very good, very good, very good. Oh, that's lovely. That's the image that Swami Sridharananda taught to me. Think of wiping the mirror. The mantra he said, the mantra is a hand in a soft white cotton glove, slowly and slowly wiping the dirt and accumulated dust from the surface of the mirror. Why a soft white cotton glove? You don't want to do anything violent that scratches your mirror. What does that mean? It means making you mentally unstable, damaging your nervous system. So that's a perfect image that you had, dear. Perfect. And when I asked Swami Sridharananda about the use of the mantra, that is what he told me. And he said that the ultimate result of that is unimaginable beauty reflected in the mirror, and then you even see the frame of the mirror, which he characterized as a beautiful Belgian mirror. Apparently the Belgians, at one time at least, may still, made beautiful frames for their mirror. What is the frame for the mirror? It is your human form. He says you see the frame for the mirror is absolutely beautiful and so intricately made. And so he used the mirror and the frame of the mirror being the mirror of the divine presence within us, the reflection of the infinite, in this finite form. And then the frame of it is this whole body, this whole being.
thank you,
Thank you,
Brother
Swayam.
That was beautiful the way you clarified for me the mirror and the frame. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's Swami Sridharananda. I was just repeating what he told me. I was so glad I asked him that question.
Brother, I was talking to a materialistic friend, and I felt like some of the materialistic, they are materialistic because their mind feels safe and secure in the surety and the solidity of the gross. And I think they try to run away from the fear of something unknown.
Yes, exactly, Rajiv. And that is exactly what we're all doing. This is why we must not judge them for what they're doing. We're all doing that. If we weren't ignorant, we would be illumined. So all of us have our own favorite ways. The materialists you just described, well and good. We don't concern ourselves with them. We don't argue with them. We respect them for who they are and what they have achieved as human beings. We do not judge them. We simply say, all right, this is how they're doing it now. This is how I'm doing it now. The two find it very difficult to talk to one another on this highest plane. So I just come to them where they are and speak to them in kindness and friendliness and spend just as much time with them as I find congenial. So yes, the materialists do it that way. We do it, each of us do it in our own way. If we weren't doing it, it would mean that our ignorance has come to an end and we would be in the state of savikalpa samadhi.
Similarly, I also know one person who is too much into the subtle but doesn't want to go into the absolutes, and that kind of makes some people unstable.
Well, they're just reveling in the psychic realm. The subtle is the psychic, and so if they're able to achieve that, well and good. There's great danger in becoming addicted to it, just like there's great danger in being addicted to drugs, because it can lead to very, very serious damage, and it may take many lifetimes to recover. This is what Patanjali himself says, and Swami Vivekananda underlines in his translation and commentary, which was published as Raja Yoga. Thank you, Rajiv. Yes, only spend as much time with these people as you feel congenial, and speak to them at their level. Don't try to speak to them from your own; they won't understand. And so, and be kind and sweet with them. Those samskaras will last with them. The fact that somebody was kind and sweet and non-judgmental, it's very rare to find such a person in this world that will behave toward us in those ways. Kindness, congenial, non-judgmental. Those samskaras, as Patanjali points out to us as we go on with this next chapter, those samskaras are transformative, whether we intend them to be or not.
Thank you, brother.
All right, Rajiv. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? All right. Chapter 2 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Yoga and its Practice. 1. Austerity, study, and the dedication of the fruits of one's actions to God. These are the preliminary steps toward yoga. Austerity, which is the yamas, restraint. He's speaking of the yamas. Austerity, study. Now he's moved to the niyamas. Austerity, restraint from being self-centered. Study, and the dedication of the fruits of one's work to God. These are the preliminary steps toward yoga. Having devoted the first chapter of his aphorisms to the aims of yoga, Patanjali now begins a chapter on its practice. These preliminary steps toward yoga are known collectively as Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga, which means literally work toward yoga. And if you recollect, if any of you run across the organization of Paramahamsa Yogananda, it is Kriya Yoga that is the foundation of those teachings. This Kriya Yoga, which literally means work toward yoga. The three words employed in this translation, austerity, study, and dedication, are none of, am I reading that right? Are none of them quite self-explanatory? Right, okay. The three words the three words employed in this translation, austerity, study, and dedication, are none of them quite self-explanatory. Their Sanskrit equivalents have a somewhat different frame of reference. Of course they do, because they come from Sankhya philosophy, which is an entirely different frame of reference than our modern one, which leads to the English that we speak. So they come from a somewhat different frame of reference. You can read about that Sankhya frame of reference if you're not familiar with it. You can read it in great detail in that book, Spiritual Heritage of India, Swami Prabhavananda's book, Spiritual Heritage of India, or you can read its summary at the back of Swami Prabhavananda's translation of the Gita, which he summarizes as the cosmology of the Gita, the Sankhya philosophy. It's very important for us to understand that the Gita and Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, his Yoga Aphorisms, are spoken to us from that frame of reference, although both of them go somewhat beyond Sankhya, Krishna, and Patanjali in the inclusion of the personal God, or Ishvara or Ishwari, in their recommendations for what to focus your attention on. How are we doing for time? Okay. Somewhat different frame of reference. And so it will be necessary to elaborate on each of them elaborate on each of them in turn. The English word austerity has a forbidding sound, but so have its two possible alternatives: mortification and discipline. Austerity, mortification, and discipline. Discipline, to most of us, suggests a drill sergeant. Mortification, a horrible, is that gangrene? Mortification, a horrible gangrene. Austerity, a cabinet minister telling the public, austerity, a cabinet minister telling the public that it must eat less butter. The Puritanism, which it has so deeply colored, the Puritanism, which is so deeply colored our language, interferes here, as so often with our understanding of Hindu thought. I'm checking the time. All right, we've got 5 minutes. I'm just reluctant to go on because Well, we'll read this part. The Sanskrit word used by Patanjali in this aphorism for austerity is tapas, which means, in its primary sense, that which generates heat, friction. Tapas means friction, that which generates heat or energy. Tapas is the practice of conserving energy and directing it toward the goal of yoga. Notice the yamas: restraint, conservation. The practices of yama, restraint, are to conserve your energy, and then the yamas give you the way to redirect the energy. We'll talk about this in detail tomorrow morning. That's what the opening subjects are for the open forum. So conserving energy and directing it toward the goal of yoga, toward union with the Atman. So we have only so much life energy, prana. Sri Ramakrishna compared it to the oil in a lamp. When the oil is all burned up, the lamp goes out. And he said this is what happens with a human being. Interestingly, this simile is also used by Kabir, that that universe is the oil in the lamp, and he is the wick through which this oil is being burned. And so it's a very powerful image. So what is the goal of yoga? Union with the Atman or Brahman, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So because we have just a few minutes left, any comments or questions about this austerity or dedication or study? The first three things mentioned in this are a summary of the yamas and niyamas: austerity, study, and dedication. What any of those may mean. We'll go into it further, but if there's any comments or questions, again, comments from your own wisdom or experience, or any questions from your concerns that this raises.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
there seems to be some overlap between Kriya Yoga and Karma Yoga. I mean,
Oh, yes.
what are the differences, if any? Why the two are called different, like Kriya Yoga?
Well, Karma Yoga is, what is the summary statement of Krishna about Karma Yoga? Live sacramentally. In other words, to purify your mind, to purify your way of being, and to no longer be attached to either your actions or their results. Live sacramentally. Offer everything to me. So it's more a focus on this last. It also involves, some aspects of austerity, but Krishna doesn't focus so much on austerity. He just says, don't worry about your actions. Don't worry about how you're doing it. Just or what the results of the actions are. Try not to concern yourself about any of those things. Offer it all to me. And he's very exhaustive in chapters 4 through 7, what he means by that. And but it is an emphasis on this dedication aspect rather than the austerity and the study. He talks about the study and the austerity in other chapters of the Gita, but his chapters on Karma Yoga, which he says is, from his perspective, And at the time that he spoke it, this was foundational. This was what the ignorance of the culture into which he was speaking was focused on. Actions and the fruits of those actions and people's attachment to them. So how to free themselves from that. Does that get it, dear?
Yes, Brother Shankar.
Okay. Anything else from anyone?
Brother, a simple example, the way I understood as posterity is like a warm up. Like, let's say you're very lazy right now. And I mean, at a certain stage, you might be experiencing a lot of joy in some sort of exercise or some sort of sport. But in a very lazy state, you will need some sort of willpower to just do what it takes to get to that stage. Like, even you don't want to do it, but you still have to do it.
Yes. And if you don't do the warm up, you risk damaging yourself by playing the sport without warming up. So you're absolutely right, Rajiv. Austerity is warm up. Very well said. It is the beginning. That's why it's the very first word mentioned, tapas, or this very careful use of the energy that you're given. That's what doing warm up is. We now move the body or do the things that are necessary to bring the energy into sufficient manifestation and focus that we can actually play the sport that we're warming up for. Even chess players do it. They have ways of doing it. Well, before they'll play a match, they'll play 10-second chess with other chess players. And 10-second chess means you have 10 seconds to make your move. Very, very difficult for anybody who's not an expert chess player to play it at all well. So yes, thank you, Rajiv. That was very, very appropriate. Anything else from anyone?
So the word kriya has the root kri. Does that have a connection with karma or karma yoga?
Well, of course, kriya is the root word, is the word from which karma comes. Kriya, it means action. Kriya, yes. Karma comes from the Sanskrit root kri. So yes.
So that means the first sutra, that means, is not only doing the tapa swadhyaya, but by putting the word kriya, it is also kind of wrapping up karma yoga in that sutra?
No, I don't think Patanjali had that intention. No, he says he has his own formula, and it starts with the yamas. Yamas are restraint, conservation of your energy by not allowing it to go out in inauspicious, unproductive ways, and even potentially damaging ways. So, because that generates bad karma, yes, there's that connection. But the yamas are restraints, restraint on our animal nature, our lower nature, our self-centeredness. And then study and dedication are a summary of the niyamas or observances that he talks about. And this is what I said we'll go into in some detail tomorrow morning as a way to start the open forum. If you download the worksheet that came with your email newsletter, or if you don't get the email newsletter, you can go either to the website or to the Facebook page and get a copy of that worksheet. It's available there as well. And download that and read what that says. We have to be careful about mixing these studies. We're now talking about Raja Yoga in the very organized way that Patanjali presented it to us. And so if we move off into a discussion of Karma Yoga, well, then we're straying from what the intent of this study is. It isn't that there's anything wrong with it per se. It just, we're just not sticking to Patanjali. So that he doesn't, you don't find that he recapitulates Krishna, though he does share many points of view with Krishna, as we may observe as we go along in this practices part.
Thank you.
Shankara,
Yes, dear.
confusion again. Is Kriya Yoga then a kind of Raj Yoga? I mean, is it a method to do Raj Yoga, or is it?
Yes. Okay, this is what the Swami is saying. Kriya Yoga is a summary way of saying Patanjali's Raja Yoga. But Patanjali never used the word Raja Yoga. This term was coined by Swami Vivekananda when he wrote his book about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. It was a wonderful pun. It is the king of yogas in that every other yoga incorporates meditation in its practice. All the other ways of it all, and what's meditation? Turning within inward. So all of them. So Raja Yoga is the king of yogas, and it is also the yoga of kings, not just physical monarchs and queens, but those kings of spiritual and queens of spiritual practice. So this term Raja Yoga was coined by Swami Vivekananda. At least I think he coined it. I don't remember him saying that that he borrowed it from somewhere else. So it's his, and you'll notice that Swami Prabhavananda does not use it. He doesn't call it Raja Yoga. He calls it how to know God.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone, dears? All right, we'll start again with reading the first aphorism and read into it next week as we go ahead. Anything further at all? Okay. Om Hari Om. Notice the power of this prayer. No, we take it for granted because we've heard it so often. Notice the power of this prayer. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Oh, dearly beloved, make it so. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Any final thought from any of you?
Brother Shankara, I just wanted to tell Anshu that I kept him in my mind during the prayer, that he find the peace that he's seeking.
Very good. And Anshu, I'm
Thank you
sure-
so much, Swayam. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
and you can bet, Anshu, that is the deep feeling of everyone whose image appears here on the screen.
God bless. Thank you.
And thank all of you, thank all of you for your participation. Those of you who speak up and share your wisdom and your concerns and questions, and those of you who, though you don't say anything, because there is only one being, there is only one consciousness, as Swami Yogeshananda put it, consciousness is primary and is not plural. We seem to be many, but the reality is we are not. So even though you don't say anything, your participation through your thoughts, your feelings, your perceptions of what's going on, and your reactions, they're felt by us, even though it may not enter our awareness. They become a blessed samskara, because this is the holiest of company. This is the holiest of company. May you all be well and in bright spirits. So, any final thought from anyone? All right. All right. Until then, tomorrow morning, when at 11 a.m. we'll start an open forum on Raja Yoga, and we'll discuss in particular the first two limbs or practices of, just as a way to begin, not to limit it to that in any way, but just to begin, we'll talk about the yamas and niyamas, because they are foundational, as we just heard. So, until next time, dears, Jai, Jai, Jai. And as our beloved character Jackie Gleason used to say, away we go.